والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا.
We resume with analytic tafsir of the surah. As normal, we start with the recitation of the surah. Who's willing to kick it off? Would you like to? Okay, Ahmed. One more time. Can you say one more time, please? You see, here we have Kaf. How many letters? 5 letters. Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ay, Ayin, Sad. Kaf, wal Ha, wal Ayn, wal Ya, wal Sad. They get pronounced differently though. First of all, in the Quran, there is this phenomena that is known as al-huruf al-muqatta'a. You may translate them as the isolated letters or the separated letters of the Quran. They are isolated or separated because we pronounce them separately. Kaf, instead of saying Alam in Alif Lam Mim, we say Alif Lam Mim. And the Prophet ﷺ, we are reported that he had said, when you get to recite the Quran, you get reward for this. For every single letter, there is a specific reward. But he actually, even more than that, he said, do not consider Alif Lam Mim as one single letter, but as 3 letters. لا أقول ألف لام ميم حرف ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف. We don't say that Alif Lam Mim as a whole is just one single letter, but actually it's composed of 3 letters. So imagine the reward of reciting as much as you would be able to. Those separated letters, they come in different forms. Roughly in, I think it's 29 surahs of the Quran. 29 surahs of the Quran begin with this, with those separated letters. So we have examples like Alif Lam, the first one of the Quran, Alif Lam Mim. Sorry. And then we have Alif Lam Ra. And we have Alif Lam Mim Ra. And we have Ha Mim. We have also Ta Sin and Ta Sin Mim. We have Taha. What else? We have Sad. We have Yasin. And we have Qaf. Are we missing anything? Noon, indeed. Any other examples? And this one, indeed. And we have Alif Lam Mim Sad. And they happen in different places, yeah. So Alif Lam Mim is not just in Al-Baqarah, it occurs in other surahs in the Quran, like Luqman and As-Sajda. So the way we pronounce them is different, though. Some of those letters, when you come to pronounce them, you have to elongate. You have to really lengthen those letters. And this happens with those letters. Alam, as in Alif Lam Mim. And it happens in Mim. It happens in Sin. Yasin. It happens in Sad. It happens in Qaf. And it happens in Kaf. And it also happens in Ain. Those letters. Out of those, when you come to pronounce them, you do 6 counts. We call them 6 harakat. Those 6 harakat, you're literally talking about like 3 seconds. So, Yasin. Okay? Qaf. Kaf. So 6 counts. Not 6 seconds. 6 seconds would be double. So it's 3 seconds. And this is the first group. The second group is you get to pronounce those as just with natural mad. They call it al-mad al-tabi'i. Natural mad. Alaykum salam. This natural mad happens in 5 letters out of those. In al-ha, wal-ya, wal-ta, wal-ha, wal-ra. In Tajweed, they call them hayyun tahur. If you want to combine as an acronym, that combines those, it's hayyun tahur. Okay? What do you do here? It's a natural mad. What do I mean by natural? It's not like 6 counts. It's just 2 counts. So think of Hamim, for example. You would say Hamim. So Hamim, the Mim belongs here. The Ha belongs here. So we say Hamim. And there is one third group. So we have a group where you do 6, and a group where you do 2, and a group where you don't do any sort of mad. There is just one single letter, that is Alif. Alif, Lam, Mim. So the Alif, there is no mad. What is confusing about Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ayn, Sa is that it's composed of those 2 groups. So the Kaf is here. That's why you say Kaf. The Ha is here. Al-Ha. Ha. The Ya is here. It is the Ya. And the Ayn is here. And the Sad is here. So 3 letters of those 5 you do with 6 mads, and 2 of those you do only with 2 mads, 2 counts. So Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ayn, Sad. 6 mads in the first, 6 mads in the fourth, and 6 mads in the fifth. The ones in the second and the third, you just do 2. So with those 2, you just relax those letters. Ha, ya, ha, ya. So just to emphasize, those ones, Alif, Lam, wal Mim, wal Sin, wal Sad, wal Qaf, wal Kaf, wal Ayn, these ones are 6 counts. Those ones, the second group is just 2 counts. Ha, Ya, Ta, Ha, Ra. And there is one with no counts, that is the Alif. Yes, yeah. The Noon is here, apologies. Noon. Okay? There are more tajweed articulations to those, but let's keep them for now. Yes, Zain. It is possible, but it is not like the mainstream way of reading it. Because these are mad lazims, like as in it's a compulsory one. With those compulsory ones, you do 6. But some scholars do 4, but it's not like a mainstream thing. Yeah. And the what? Sorry. What they are called? What kind of mud? Oh, it's called mad lazim, as in you have lazim means you have to lengthen them, to elongate them. Are you looking for the English translations or the? So this one is called natural mud, or natural where you do natural elongation. This one you do 6. It doesn't have a specific name to it. If you like, you can call it like 6 count, but if you like. But that's the thing about those letters. They don't have a rule to them as such. As in, we're not covering the subject of mad tonight, by the way. I'm just tackling this. Otherwise, the subject of mad, where Zaina's question would relate, that's where the debate happens, whether to do with 4 or 6. But 6 is a mainstream thing, especially when it comes to those letters. But those ones that don't have a specific name to them. Those, inshallah we come to this as we get to analyze the text, maybe. So, the way we do it now, the kaf and the hayn, the kaf is 6. Ha and ayn are, the ha and ya, are just 2. Al-ayn was sad are 6. And you may do the ayn as 4, but again, it's not a mainstream thing. It's a plausible and a valid reading, yeah. Yes. نداء وإني يرثني yes well done يا ما شاء الله شكرا بغلام اسمه أنى يكون غلام كذلك عليكم السلام علي well done يا جماعة ما شاء الله منيب نعم.
قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 ليال سويا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إليهم أن سبحوا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إليهم أن سبحوا بكرة وعشيا يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا وحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا وبرا بوالديه ولم يكن جبارا عصيا وسلام عليه يوم ولد ويوم يموت ويوم يبعث حيا واذكر في الكتاب مريم
لقد we stop here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كافها يا عين صاد ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال رب إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك رب شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي عاقرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله رب رضيا.
فتح الله لك أحمد.
يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى لم يجعل له من قبل سميا قال رب أنى يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا وقد بلغت من الكبر قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 ليال سويا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إليهم أن سبحوا بكرة وعشيا
الله يفتح عليك حافظ.
يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا وحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا وبرا بوالديه ولم يكن جبارا عصيا وسلام عليه يوم ولد ويوم يموت ويوم يبعث حيا.
جمال بداية السورة. كل ده Well done, ya Jamal. The sister's side. الكبري. سوية. Well done, ya ما شاء الله. Next. فخرج. فخرج. بكرة وعشية. وزكاة. وزكاة. Yes. تقية. بوالديه. ولد. Well done, mashallah. Other reciters? Okay. We want to read the translation. So probably, if someone can read slowly and loudly, please. Otherwise, we can read like each one can read a verse. Zain. Oh, Lean. Maybe you share with Lean. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now we have a 2 minutes for silent reflection. Where the key question is, just share with us very briefly, and less than 1 minute if you wish, something that stands out or puzzling to you, something that you feel that you want to react to or something. 2 minutes. Okay. Whatever you have in mind, keep it in mind. We'll come to it in a minute. But what I just want to share with you now, before, as we are talking about isolated letters, and if you may allow me to begin with what I wanted to share as well, because it's quite relevant to this. It's to do with the idea of the isolated letters, al-huruf al-muqatta'a. For me, it is fascinating, not just in terms of tajweed, but also in terms of the meanings. So al-huruf al-muqatta'a is probably the biggest secret of the Quran. Where, one of the most ambiguous areas of the Quran, where scholars have disagreed literally since the 1st century of Islam. The Quran is not very clear, is not clear at all on what they mean. Nor did the Prophet ﷺ explain what those isolated letters mean. This situation left us with, scholars speculating on what they could mean. The overwhelming majority of scholars, they have said, these letters, they belong to a genre or to a subject in the Quran that the Quran itself identifies as al-mutashabih. They basically say this is simple. We know that the function of those letters is to challenge the disbelievers of Makkah. To tell, in a way, the Quran is telling them, here is the Quran composed of the language that you use, but I'm giving you words that you can't really grasp. As if the Quran is actually ascending in terms of how it challenged the people of Quraysh. Beginning with challenging them to produce a Quran, an entire Quran like this Quran, but they couldn't. Then the Quran actually descended and lowered the challenge, saying, okay, if you can't bring one entire Quran, can you try bringing 10 surahs? They couldn't. Quran descended again by asking them to produce one chapter, but they could not. And those huruf al-muqatta'a, the Quran is telling them, okay, produce letters that have meanings. like those letters. So it's part of this context of challenge. That is why also were those chapters that begin with those isolated letters, they are often followed by a discussion on the Quran. Or the Quran would be mentioned somewhere in that surah. It's part of the bigger picture. So they say, that group of scholars, they say this is the meanings of those, even though we know why the function of those letters, we don't really know, we don't have access to the actual meanings of those letters, because they belong to this, to al-mutashabih genre. If you open the 7th verse of Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd chapter of the Quran, it says, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. It is he who has sent this scripture down to you. Some of its verses are definite in meaning. These are the cornerstone of the scripture, and others are ambiguous. Then the Quran says, the perverse at heart eagerly pursue the ambiguities in the attempt to make trouble and to pin down a specific meaning of their own, when only God knows the true meaning of those ambiguous ones. So they simply say the Quran in and of itself divided its own verses into two primary areas, al-muhkam wal-mutashabih. Muhkam are those verses that are decisive in meaning, very definitive. And the mutashabih are the indecisive ones. The meanings are not clear. They say that's the Quranic methodology. Allah is telling us some of the verses of the Quran would be very clear, other verses want to be clear. Live with this. This has a secret to it. Don't aspire to know what they mean. And we should not actually, we should know what those are. And we should not really try to pin down what they actually mean. That group of scholars would say those isolated letters, they belong to this genre. The problem with this, okay, just before I say that, it's the mutashabih, the ambiguous verses in the Quran, of course, they are not at the same level. So there are, the scholars of Islamic law, Islamic theology as well, they have specific concepts that you use for those. So they have a concept called an-nas. An-nas means literally when something is explicitly mentioned. I don't know, I'm big with this even further. What they mean by the nas is just al-muhkam. The mutashabih, indecisive ones, underneath this category, they have something called al-zahir. And al-zahir literally means something has a meaning that comes to your mind. At first, you get a first impression of what it means. But other interpretations could also be possible. When you really dig deeper on those, you find that other interpretations are possible, but there are ones that come immediately to your mind as you read. Right? Think, for example, of كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس, which is another verse in this surah. If you look at Surah Al-Imran, the same surah, the third chapter of the Quran, verse number 110. The verse says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas." In Arabic, if I am to translate this literally, it says, you were the best community that has ever been produced for the people, out of all people. Right? What comes to your mind when you first hear this? Muslims is Islam is, I don't know, Muslims are the chosen ummah or the chosen nation. Am I right? When you look deeper, you realize that there are conditions, there are limitations. The verse is not saying, Antum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, you are the best nation. It actually says, Kuntum, you were. It doesn't say you are, even though the translator here says, you are the best community. The verse in Arabic is not saying you are, it's actually saying you were. Kuntum khayra. The fact that the Quran used the word kuntum, not antum, you were, not you are, moves this from being, if it says antum khayra ummatin, this would have been muhkam. Right? As in, it's decisive in meaning. Okay? So there is an understanding that comes to your mind at its face value. But then when you look deeper into it, you realize there is a context to this. And even furthermore, it adds conditions. It says there are 3 conditions that made you in the past. You believe in God, you have faith, you command what is good, you forbid what is evil. So you were not randomly chosen, and this is not like an unlimited or unconditional offer that is given to Muslims. There are conditions to it, and it's happened in the past. That means Muslims cannot say wholeheartedly or completely, we are the chosen ummah or something. The Quran is not saying that. Even though it might come to your mind as you recite this verse in the beginning, that it is saying that. That's the notion of al-zahir. It's apparently clear. It is apparently clear. But when you really look deeper, you realize it's not really very clear. Okay? But they have another thing that is called al-mujmal. Al-mujmal, it means like it's general. The Quran is not specifying. An example of this, if you look with me, Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter, verse number 228. 228. It says, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. The divorced women must wait for 3 periods. What are those 3 periods? The word the Quran uses here is the word quru. Quru is a very general word that is often used in pre-Islamic Arabic to carry the meaning of the bringing together of something. Quru is the plural of qur, and it carries the meaning of when you bring some things together. Actually, the word Quran comes from this. What happens with the Quran? You compile, you collect verses of the Quran together. You collect the entire Quran, surahs next to each other, and you end up with the Quran. Quru, it carries that meaning. You bring something together. It could be stuff, could be numbers, could be whatever. That's the essential meaning. The verse is saying divorced women or widowed women, they should not get married. They actually have this period that is called al-idda, the time where they are meant to wait. They should not get married until this period passes. It's called idda. How do we count this idda? How do we calculate? Some scholars understood the word qur to mean the period of menstruation. The actual period. When women have this, which is a period of impurity, so to speak. Okay? And that is the Hanafi school. They say women, after they get divorced, if they get divorced, any woman that gets divorced, she needs to wait for 3 periods. She needs to count 3 times when she gets the actual period, the menstruation. 3 times. That's the Hanafi school. Okay? The Shafi'is and the Malikis, they actually say it is the opposite. It actually means the time of purity. They need to count 3 times of purity after they get divorced. They need to count 3, could be 3 months, be 3, no matter what it takes. So they need to wait for 3 times until they become pure. So here you have a word that gets used in 2 opposite meanings. One is saying it's the period of impurity, that is the Hanafis, and the non-Hanafis say it's actually the period of purity. The word in Arabic is talking about like bringing together, the bringing together of something. Here you are bringing together the periods of purity, 3 months of 3 times of purity, and on the other side you are counting 3 times of impurity. And the context is not helping, as in the context doesn't help really understand what could be. That's another level of ambiguity. So the mutashabih in the Quran comes in various forms. Here's an example, the mujmal, the general one. When the context is not helping. The zahir, when something is, the meaning is possible. Sorry, there is a meaning that comes that is very apparent. But when you dig deeper, you realize, no, there is a space for another interpretation. Even though there is one that comes first to your mind. That's another layer of ambiguity. The highest level of ambiguity is those. Simply because, there is no context. They begin the conversation. Like, in English you have the topical sentence. The sentence with which you begin a paragraph, right? The leading sentence. Which is meant to be the clearest sentence because it is, whatever you have after this sentence should explain, should support this leading sentence. If the leading sentence is not clear, because it sets the scene. If it's not clear, then there is not that. May explain this. So it literally lies at the highest level of ambiguity. So those scholars, that group of scholars, they say this is beyond us. And naturally, they would often quote this verse, the one we shared, the verse number 7 in Surah Al-Imran. The Quran is divided into muhkam, that is decisive, and verses that are indecisive. Those indecisive ones, they come in different forms. Some of them are like qur, the mujmal, and the zahir, and some of them are absolutely ambiguous, like this one. We given, there is no hope. And actually, the fact that the Quran is saying only Allah knows about the meanings should actually deter us from pursuing this anyway. Right? That's the first group. The second group, says, no. Yes, these are very ambiguous, but Allah has given access to certain specific people to have access to those meanings. Abdullah ibn Abbas is reported to have said, I am one of those people who have had access to the meanings of some of those isolated letters. So, for example, even though this narration is somehow dubious, he would say the kaf in kaf ha ayn sad refers to one of the names of Allah, al-Kafi, or al-Karim, the generous one. Al-Ha refers to al-Hadi, it's the guide. Al-Ayn refers to al-Alim or al-Alim, the all-knowing. As-Sad refers to as-Sadiq, like the truthful. Right? So that's the second group. A third, and Abdullah ibn Abbas actually, according to this narration, actually says, he invokes the same verse, he cites the same verse number 7 of Surah Al-Imran. And he tells the other group that you pose on the wrong place of the verse. Let's look at the verse again. The verse literally says, It is He who has sent this scripture to you. Some of its verses are definite in meaning, and others are ambiguous. The verse goes on to say, only God knows the true meaning. But the verse actually is saying in Arabic, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. The supporters of the first interpretation, they say we should pause by the bit of the verse that says only God knows what we mean. Abdullah ibn Abbas says, no, we should pause by وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. So only God and the Rasikhun of Ilm, and those who are firmly established in knowledge, we would know with what they mean. Therefore, Abdullah ibn Abbas said, I am one of those people who have had access to this, to the knowledge of those ambiguous verses. How? And there are other scholars that would say, actually, we don't believe that this is part of the mutashabih anyway. But that's a very tiny minority. We just need to pursue. The Prophet ﷺ did not leave us with any explanation, but we should really pursue the meanings of those verses. What is interesting is when you combine, the letters that we've had, those 29 letters, they actually combine them in a very interesting phrase. They say, Nassun, Hakimun, Qati'un, Lahu Sir. That's an acronym for those letters. It says it's a decisive text, a decisive, wise text that has a secret to it. That's the combination of all those letters. It's a decisive or a wise text, a decisive, wise text that has a secret to it, which is speaks of the nature of the isolated letters themselves. But subhanAllah, even when you think about it, is the mubtada, the predicate with it you begin the sentence, and therefore the khabar would be ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا. Possible. Or is ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا in and of itself a mubtada, and this is something we have nothing to do with it, leave it alone. You never know. That's subhanAllah. It speaks of our, limitations as well. And with either interpretations, there are implications that you might not agree with. If you believe this is a mutashabih and we should not pursue this, that equally means there are verses that Allah speaks to us in a language that we don't really understand, which is again defeats the purpose of the Quran. The Quran introduces itself as a mubin, kitab mubin, a clarifying book. How could it clarify when it is that ambiguous? And it's not like much of the Quran lies in this genre, the mutashabih genre. That one of the key works that have been written in the 70s in English literature, or in German literature called Islam, a book called The Culture of Ambiguity. That the Islamic culture as a whole is a culture of ambiguity. Because much of the Quran, when you come to read the verses of the Quran, or the works of tafsir, or the works of Islamic law, the works of Islamic theology, you come up with, I don't know, tens of interpretations. This verse is ambiguous, that verse is ambiguous. And you're not making things up. This is it. The Quran is not, it is a simple book, but it is not simplistic. Like it is complex in the meanings it generates and that. And Allah speaks of it as one of the meanings that you may read it, the Quran Kareem, it's very generous. To me, it's also generous in meanings. Like it always produces meanings. It's generous with meanings. The meanings never stop. So that aspect, that construct, kaf, ha, ayin, sad, amazes me. Alongside the whole genre of al-mutashabih, if you want to classify this as al-mutashabih. Keep those words in mind, al-zahir, al-mujmal. Those examples might help. But again, this may help with anything, just to show you that the complexity of the Islamic tradition, the complexity of the Quran, not an easy book. And I can count so many examples of a verse that you think is very clear. Well, it turns out it's not very clear. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. On a specific verse, and he thought this verse really supports the Salafi understanding of Islam. It's the verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. Verse number 137. The thing is, if you don't speak Arabic, you won't get what I mean, because the translation actually says the Arabic word is saying فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ. So the guy is saying, it's a very common understanding of the verse, to be honest. If they believe, the translation says, so if they believe like you do, they will be rightly guided. As you can understand from the translation, you take it as if it's saying, if they have the faith that you have, that the Quran is speaking to the companions, if they have the same faith, then they are rightly guided. And that somehow sanctions the faith of the Salaf, as if it's like, this is the example that you need to follow. And the verse, to be honest, for me, has nothing to do with this. The verse is not saying, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا مِثْلَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. If they believe the same way you do, which is again the translated as that, the verse is not saying that. The verse is saying, if they have believed in the stuff that I've just mentioned, in which you also have believed, they are rightly guided. What are those stuff? It's literally the previous verse that says, قُولُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا. Say we believe in God, we believe in this, we believe in that. If they believe in the same stuff, they are rightly guided. As in, it's not talking about the depth of the faith, it's talking about the items of the faith. Anyone can believe in that. It's not sanctioning their own specific subjective faith. It is talking about an objective reality. The previous verse counted a couple of names: Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub. If they believed in this, if they believed in God, if they believed in those prophets, they are fine. The verse has been taken by that group. To me, it is referring to the depth of faith of the Salaf, which has nothing to do with the verse. That's why the context helps here. And immediately the verse moves from being one of muhkam to being one of zahir or mujmal. Because at first sight, it looks like it's very obvious. It's talking about the depth of the faith. Of course, nothing against the Salaf. It's how we may understand a specific verse at first face value. So it is talking about a specific context, and it's talking about certain objective items. 1, 2, 3. Look at the previous verse. So you believers say, we believe in God and what was sent down to us, and what was sent down to Abraham, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, and the tribes, and what was given to Moses, Jesus, and all the prophets by the Lord. We make no distinction between any of them, and we devote ourselves to Him. So if they believe in those things, right? So it's referring to those items, not to the depth of the faith of those. Does this make sense? That's again something that at first sight seems to be supporting a specific view, and when you look deeper, you realize no, it's really about something. Still, it's a plausible meaning, the first one, but it does not negate other possibilities. If that makes sense. For me, there was something that was, stands out in this passage. I'm happy to listen to any thoughts you might have. Something that again striking stands out. Yes, Juma.
I think the verses are a very interesting example of positive psychology, in the sense that positive psychology is generally the opposite of what people think psychology to be as. It's focused on productivity and fulfillment, generally things that more traditional clinical routes don't focus on. There's this acronym by probably the most famous positive psychologist, Seligman. It's PERMA, which is positive emotion, engagement, meaning, positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And I think this verse is a very good example of all of them. The delight when Prophet Zachariah finds out that he is going to be blessed. That's the positive emotion. The engagement it's an ongoing conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that there is a command that is sent down and the command that's followed, and then there is and then the relationship is it is about to begin with, is about the relationship, but the relationship between someone who is requesting something, and someone who's fulfilling something, and then the meaning of this fulfillment means that his life or the prophecy continues, and then the achievement of the fulfillment essentially of his request.
Interesting.
Definitely, for me, it was quite striking in the sense that it almost follows the exact acronym to the T.
How interesting.
In this, the Quran is. We spoke yesterday about how secular psychology almost lacks this understanding. Yet there come intersections where somebody who's probably never had any interaction.
Thank you so much, Ram. Thank you so much.
This verse.
Thank you so much. Indeed, often that text, people will come to will focus on the dua that Zakaria makes in the beginning, which shows his weakness and that. But this is part of the story. Even when he makes that the dua, those meanings come up. He's hopeful. He is not pessimistic, he's still committed to Allah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Yes, yeah. Yeah, many. Just trying to keep it basic. Yeah. Yes, Harry.
Similar to what you just mentioned, but him mentioning that his hand growing old.
Ham Jibran or Ham
Sorry, yes.
Zakari.
Mentioning he's growing old, kind of possibly in a material sense, pushing away the plausibility or the possibility of him having a child further and further, yet still having that hope in Allah that he's still able to do it. It reminded me of like a verse of poetry that like came across a while back, and it says, وإني لأرجو الله حتى كأنني أرى بجميل الظن والله تعالى. Is that he has such good hope and like good done in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he almost, even though it's so far no one could possibly believe him, he's able to see that God is able to do it.
Subhanallah. Indeed. See it happening. Yeah. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Even those, we may read this thing, that mutashabih Allah, but in this passage as well, in the sense that this passage has often been understood to mean that Zakaria is looking for a son. Which is, again, what comes to your mind initially. But there is a scope as well where we may understand that Zakaria is just asking for a successor, no matter what. Actually, he does not, I mean, if you look at this text more particularly, he does not say, I want a son. He says, I'm looking for a successor. I don't want this community to be left without a leader. And I'm asking for a way out of this. If they are left alone, no community can work like that. So he's asking for a successor. And that's why he gets surprised. Otherwise, how do you explain that element of surprise? If you are making a dua, then that means you are hopeful. When it happens, you should not be surprised. You know how capable Allah is, how powerful He is. Yes, you might be astonished, but I wouldn't expect Zakaria to be saying, "Anna yakunu li ghulam." How could I have a son? I thought you'd be doing something else. Maybe show me like another one, producing a good leader, I don't know, whatever. But I did not expect it would be me. That is something you can read also in this passage. Even though, what may question this interpretation is in Surah Al-Anbiya, it says, وَزَكَرِيَّا إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. But again, you can apply the same prashna. He's not asking for a son as such. He's saying, don't leave me alone. And you may read the same thing into the context of leadership. He's looking for a future leader. And you are the best of all us. I don't want to leave this community in a chaos. فاستجبنا له وهبنا له يحيى وأصلحنا له زوجه إنهم كانوا يسارعون في الخيرات. Someone might say, okay, in Surah Al-Imran it says, ذرية طيبة إنك وذلك دعا زكريا ربه قال هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. The ذرية does not always refer to your immediate successors. Could refer to someone who comes from your, cousin, through your cousins, someone from the family, right? So the Quran is far from being explicit on Zakaria asking for a son. It says Zakaria asking for a successor. That successor could be his son. But what may question this reading, as we said, is that element of surprise. And it's an absolute surprise. He's saying, أن لا يكون لي غلام. Again, how do we explain this element without again, I can understand an element of astonishment, as in when one gets answered for his prayers, you become happy. But now, Zakaria is saying, for me, it's a dead end. Like, I'm an old man, my wife is really barren, there's no way. I actually thought you were talking about something. I'm asking for another someone else. Yes, sir. Did you raise your hand? Oh, okay, please.
Is there scope to think that not only an يقول اليوم is similar to him asking how is that going to be, like Ibrahim's question a teacher it's a question of how exactly will that happen other than surprise. Even though
how would it make? What's the difference here? What would be the difference?
The other one is more inquisitive rather than astonished. As in, he asks for a successor. It happens to be a son. He says, "How is that possible?" Even though this and that, as in, almost asking for how will the son come about. Asking for how will Allah create.
The point that I was trying to make though, is it seems that Zakaria knows when he made the dua, the earlier dua, that he given those justifications. I know that I'm old, I'm too old, my wife is barren, I am excluded from this dua. I'm actually making a dua for another person. As in, like implicitly, he's saying, I know for me it's closed. Therefore, when it happens, he's as if he's reminding Allah, I'm too old, my wife is barren, there is no chance. That's why he is surprised. If that makes sense. Like, as in, if he knows all those, do you get my point?
It's him being surprised is very clear. It's much more apparent. But I'm just wondering if there's a scope to see it as one of, like Ibrahim is asking Allah, how do you bring about life even though he knows?
But in Ibrahim's case, there is no impossibility. There is no impossibility in Ibrahim's case, as in, he knows Allah is powerful, he just wants to see how. When in Zakaria's case, logically it is impossible. It's too old, wife is barren. That's why he's justifying. In Ibrahim's case, Ibrahim is not saying, there is no way you can do it. That's why those couple of statements from Zakaria, they are there for a reason. And that's that preposition, bi, an la yakun bi ana. How would it happen to me? I thought it was someone else. I'm making this dua for someone else. And that's why he needs to remain silent for 3 nights. ثلاث ليال سوية. سوية means he was healthy. Like as in, he was not, he could not speak because he was ill, sick. No, since he was absolutely fine. Zakaria senses that be saying things about him, how could anyone? So here is a context. I mean, to me, it perfectly makes sense that he was just making a general dua. And given the context that Zakaria is sitting, he's sitting in a context of responsibility and a setting of responsibility of leadership. وهن العظم مني اشتعل الرأس شيبة ولم أكن بدعائك ربي شقيا إني خفت الغوالي من ورائي. The people that I'm supposed to be the leader, I'm too old. They can't be left without a leader. Produce us a good leader. It happens to be his son. That's why he's surprised. Otherwise, I mean, again, there is a plausibility to the other interpretation, but for me, I would not expect Zachariah. If this is the case, I would not be expecting him to be saying, "How could this be happening when I am this, I am that." Wallahu a'lam. Yes, sir.
Do you allow me to also
Attack.
attack this question?
See you when inshallah.
As far as I understand, he's saying there's another possibility of understanding the verse as if Zachariah is asking how is it going to happen when my wife is a little for her to have that baby. This I think the uses of anna in the Quran, as far as I can see, does not kind of imply a question rather than a normal question. Rather, it comes with some sort of an explanation. The verse is like, and you have to solve them, and you have to solve them. It does not ask how, in fact, how do you do this? In fact, it's doing with an explanation. Same thing with the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah. قال أن الرجل تعجب من أن في هذه النوع. No, he didn't ask. As far as I can see, how he was surprised. I was going to happen.
No, actually, I get your point. So, as if Hafiz is saying, actually means how, he actually means how, as in asking Kaifa, and just asking a normal question. Show me how, when I am this, when I am that. But yes, I know, I take Kaifa's point. Normally, the word anna has that sense of astonishment. I don't see any way for it. But the word anna, in Arabic, anna can mean kaifa, but it also mean min aina. Half of the saying could possibly be saying, again, show me how, just show me how, like as in kaifa, how does this happen? When often in the Quran, yes, the Quran uses anna to mean it, to just signify the impossibility of something. That's state of astonishment also. Interesting. Allah thoughts.
Yes. Regarding the story itself, I think, at least to me, it would be a normal story that the Prophet asks Allah to run the initial interpretation that he wants a son and Allah gives him a son. Somewhat, it does not, it's a normal, I would say it's a normal kind of story. However, I think if we link it back to an important verse in Surah Maryam, in the same Surah, أولئك الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين من ذرية آدم. And then later on said ممن هدينا واجتبينا. But I think I cannot read the story without this. The continuation of such message, the continuation of such path, the continuation of such ordeal. Have, as you said, with that sense of responsibility and leadership, wanting to continue on that path that Allah has chosen these prophets for. I think it's to be understood in the light of this verse, rather than just the normal story. The prophet asking for a son and that, and
interesting. So that's another important point. If we take the normal track, Zachariah would be asking for more personal request. I want the son for me. When Zachariah is looking for a communal responsibility, it's a community that I'm looking after. Be it my son, be it someone else, or I'm looking for a leader. That does indeed, thank you so much for the question. That's a very good thought. Very, what you call it? Quality. other quality thoughts? Yes.
I wonder if this speaks to first letter of the count that stated and possibly speak of Kareem or Kalam, that he asks for a successor. He gets an almost impossible son, and that this son is someone that has never been seen like as if they have Semi. He's almost the best from the ones before him. The fact that Yahya himself is not just an ordinary child, but some kind of extraordinary one. As in, he asked for a small thing, and then Allah kind of very gracefully gave him multiple more.
Speak to the little cat.
To the idea of karam. As in the first story is talking about Allah's karam, as in asking for a small thing and getting overwhelmed by it.
So you belong to Abdullah Abbas? No, which is it? If he truly said that, of course, it's a very valid thought indeed. And Allah's karam of us, universities, across the whole surah, absolutely. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yes.
I think you mentioned it briefly just now, but the idea of the weakness, him expressing his weakness in his dua. And it's, again, because you mentioned last week that it's sort of coming down from the time of his weakness, his own weakness, and he's feeling like, he's being, everyone's just leaving with him, doing stuff like that. And this is like the prophet who came before him to express his weakness to Allah, and Allah, gave him from his mercy for the prophet, and gave him a way so forward with his son and stuff like this. So I guess there's sort of that link there between the two prophets.
A situation of earnest possibility as well, very stuck with the actions. Indeed. Allah finds ways out of every dead end. Indeed. What comes to my mind, something to do with the essence of the prayers that the prophets made. It feels like the prayers that the prophets made. I didn't see them as prayers in the first place, but rather as communications. As in, these people, they just wanted to have a conversation with Allah, where they express themselves, a moment of expression. Somehow venting, so to speak, expressing something, that's part of it when you are so angry. You get some sort of comfort when you speak. I'm mad at Ahmed. I get some comfort when I go and complain about it to others. After I see whatever I want to say, I'm fine now. It is us, we like that, isn't it? We appreciate certain people in our lives, we say we are good listeners. Whenever we are really mad, we listen. I don't want you to give me solutions. I want you just to listen. That's in of itself. I think prophets, if you look into the prayers that the prophets make throughout the Quran, you find this. And we often miss the point. That, as in, Allah knows Zachariah's situation. He knows what he's going through. But yet, Zachariah insists to say, look at me, I'm too old, my bones have become weak, developing gray hair, this and that, I need your help. Expressing yourself gives comfort. The same thing with Yaqub's sons. They have missed the point as well. When they say, are you complaining about Allah, so to speak? No. I'm actually listening, I'm expressing my feelings to him. In Allah, to him. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا I know what you do about it. Right? The same with Ayub, the example of patience of Ayub my situation is one of them. I've been touched with calamities, all these. وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ You are the most blessed. You would realize that Prophet prayers in the they haven't asked for specific things. The most beautiful of all is the Prophet's prayer in thought. Where he says, أنت ربي مستضعفين وأنت ربي اللهم إليك أشكو ضعف قوتي. You alone I'm complaining about my weakness. وقلة قوتي. You know, the scarcity of my means. I'm lacking means. وهواني على الناس. The way I'm being humiliated by people. أنت ربي مستضعفين وأنت ربي. Are the Lord of the weak ones, you are my Lord, because I am مستضعف. إلى من تكذب. To whom are you leaving me? إلى بعيد يتجهمني. To foreigners who are mistreating me, as the example of the Prophet people. أم إلى عدو من له. Or the people of Mecca, whom you have given power over me. إنما يكون بك علي غضب. ولا أبالي. I thought this is to do with that. Have I done this wrong? That really necessitated, that invokes your anger, your wrath upon me. If you're not angry with me, then I'm happy to continue this way. ولكن العفو والعافية. I'm sorry. If it's done a little bit easier, I would appreciate it. That is expressing your emotions to Allah. Not to be glad to find your comfort in Allah and with Allah. Then when you are angry, to come to stand up and pray to Allah and speak for Allah. Say whatever you want to say. Wallahi, million times better than saying to people. You can do nothing. Literally. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا حزبه الأمر فزع إلى الصلاة. When he is too worried about something, he gets up and prays. This is one of the most sins we've lost. When you have worry, something that is annoying, anguish, give you a hard time, stand up and pray. Do some sujood. Don't make this work as well. This is a remedy that the Prophet himself had used. We don't use it. And it becomes a habit of the Prophet, one of his habits that he would do this. We don't look at the prayer this way. That's why he gets to say, give us the comfort to pray. We don't view prayer this way. We view prayer as an obligation. We need to do it because of paradise. For him, it's an immediate treatment. An immediate remedy against what he gets to receive in Makkah. And that speaks to the hadith that I often quote, where the Prophet says, إِنَّهُ لَمْ تَمُوتَ نَفْسٌ حتى تستكمل رزقها وأجلها. There is not a single soul that will die before it gets all that was destined for it, the provision that was destined for it. You won't die before that. فاتقوا الله وأجملوا في الطلب. Then be mindful of Allah. أجملوا في الطلب. It's often translated as make your prayers beautiful. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say جملوا في الطلب. It says أجملوا. Make your prayers general. من الإجمال وليس من الجمال. So do not ask for specific prayers because you could be asking your own destruction. The Quran says, وَيَدْعُ الْإِنسَانُ بِالشَّرِّ دُعَاءَهُ بِالْخَيْرِ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا. When you persist, you insist on a specific prayer, and you don't really know whether this is good for you, Surah Yunus actually confirms this. وَلَمْ يُعَجِّلِ اللَّهُ لِلنَّاسِ الشَّرَّ اسْتِعْجَالًا بِالْخَيْرِ لَقُضِيَ إِلَيْهِمْ أَجَلُهُم. So there are those situations when we really be asking for our own destruction. Allah says, ask general questions, maybe explain your situation to Allah, express your feelings to Him, not to people. Because you need, complain about Allah to the people when they can do you nothing. But you have Him, explain to Him. He likes that. He likes to see our own. Because sometimes we become arrogant even from Allah. You don't want even to explain, to speak about your weakness. When this is the essence of who you are. I see literally the embodiment of this in the Kenya's prayer. وَأَنَا الْعَوْضُ مِنِّي. She's literally saying, the bones that are often seen as the strongest of the body, they themselves have collapsed, let alone the weaker ones. ولما أعتذروا عليه. But I know that, as long as I'm committed. And that's why the essence of dua is about, dua is in of itself a form of ibadah. The Prophet we have two narrations of hadith. One says that dua huwa al-ibadah. That dua is so simple in Islam that the Prophet says it is the worship. And another hadith says that dua mukhtar ibadah is the essence of ibadah, worship. In the sense that the whole thing about the prayer. Because you engage in a conversation with Allah. You may consider the prayer as literally it is those couple of moments that will put you in the perfect context to make a dua. You stand up for the ruku' and sujood, but your heart may be present enough to make a dua. That's how the dua becomes the essence of it. You can have a conversation. But we miss this point as well when we come to look at prayer as an obligation. The Prophet ﷺ, when he gets asked, what do you like about this world? The pleasures of this world. He names the prayer as one of the pleasures of this world. If I'm asking you what do you consider the pleasure of this world? When you would say, for example, whatever. A very healthy thing. That's us. That is us. The Prophet is considered a religious act as an earthly act because of the amount of sweetness he perceives in it. He must have seen something different about prayer. When we don't read that this, we deeply that this. Any other thoughts? Yes.
There's almost therapeutic relationship between us and personal power. Does it, to my understanding, it also challenges the more traditional narrative of the unapproachable nature of public prayer. Goes too far for you, so just request. It's more like a suggestion and complaint box. You drop something in, and then something happens, and you don't really know what. Then, an in-person, a very close relationship where you're able to express yourself, not necessarily in demand, but as you would to another caring person, which, I mean, this is something that definitely interests me about the links between Islam and modern psychology, but what I think this would imply would be a whole different nature of a relationship. Like wonderful, a completely different dynamic where it's so much more equal in its, not in its capacities, but in its magnitude of compassion.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful, Gibran. Gibran is talking about the approachability of God in Islam. I can approach, actually I can relate. But we don't reflect much on this. One of the articles that I've been for ages working on is the way we view Islam. Islam has largely been reduced to a religion, become a religion of worship, when the God that the Quran presents is one of fellowship. Allah wants you to become a fellow with Him. When I'm in need, I will come back to you. Even the essence of worship is fellowship, but sometimes we actually part it for, if I have the time. Okay. The first introduction of my second book, it talks much about this, how Islam fishing has been legalized. Legalized in the sense, Islam is just about certain specific actions you do, and that's it. There is no relationship whatsoever. It's a ibadah you do, expecting a reward in the hereafter. جعفر الصادق رضي الله عنه كان يقول لا تعبدوا الله عبادة التجار. Do not worship Allah in the way that traders do. What do traders do? What they do is simply they buy and sell. So we are selling our time, we are selling our worship, and we are expecting the thaman, the reward from Allah. That's what trade. He says, do not worship Allah in this way. And if you do, it's one of the lowest ways in which you may approach Allah. As if you are trading with him. As if you can look at the discussion for the dangers of doing Allah this way. Even though you may, as a stepping stone to someone, they can understand it. But do not make this your higher even Islam. The Prophet ﷺ once said, before I make this one, he says, لا تعبدوا الله عبادة التجار ولا عبادة العبيد. The worship of the slaves. What do the slaves do? They only perform acts of worship when they are threatened. A slave does things. A slave obeys his master often when they are being threatened. And then it's وَلَا تَعْبُدُوا عِبَادَةَ الْأَحْرَارِ. But worship him, the worship of the people, the free people. The people who worship him because he is worthy of worship. He is worthy of being worshipped. So you have three different types of worship. One of traders, one of slaves, and one of the free ones, or the liberal ones. Liberal is this name. Free ones. Liberal. Liberal. So, عبادة الأحرار وليس عبادة التجار. The Prophet ﷺ once said, من آمن بالله ورسوله وأقام الصلاة. Though anyone who believes in Allah, performs prayers, does zakah, دخل الجنة جاهد في سبيل الله أو مات بأرضه التي ولد فيها. He will be admitted into paradise whether he did any sort of jihad. Right? He gets asked, how could it be? Someone is asked, right? What do you so we tell the people, because it is that simple. So do not view paradise as if it's as a one degree. Because for those when you ask from the highest place, do not content yourselves with the most basic levels. Always aspire for what is better. So worshiping Allah through an essence of fellowship in the first place. The whole aim of worship is to become a fellow, so to speak. Not just a slave. Not a slave. And that's why, and I really hate it when I hear this word, the word abd in the Quran should not be translated as slave. We are not slaves as such. Slaves get led to Allah by force. We are not forced. Allah doesn't want us to be forced. He wants us to come to Him freely. That's what He says. So He gave us freedom. Should we reject us and say, no, we are His abid? We're not His abid. And whenever this word is used in the Quran, it should be translated as worship. Worship Allah. And ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarahu. To worship Allah. Why do we say to become a slave of Allah as if you say? It doesn't mean that. It just means abd. When I say ana a'budu shay'an, it means you absolutely devoted, absolutely committed to it. That's what it means. But we have reduced this again to a concept of slavery. We have become slaves. And this word really gets me agitated. We should use this word, slaves. Slaves is a word that has connotations. One of its key components is a sense of compulsion. We are forced to become, to worship. Actually, one of the key reasons behind much of the evil that we see is because of how much freedom Allah has given us. He values freedom so much that He compromised so many things so that we end up being free in our choices. Even if this would mean the amount of evil that we see in us. Allah decided to do it. Allah could have actually prevented us from making choices. He chose otherwise. That means He values our freedom. So that approachability of Allah is absolutely an important point. Yeah. Oh, we have 40 minutes to go. If you have any other thoughts or questions, happy to throw this to a close. One, count, three. 1, 2. No other comments? Okay. SubhanAllah. Inshallah, la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Inshallah, we meet up next week. Thank you so much.
مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني